The whole party now broke up into groups, Arrowhead and his wife sitting apart under the bushes, conversing in a low tone, though the man spoke sternly, and the woman answered with the subdued mildness that marks the degraded condition of a savage's wife. Pathfinder and Cap occupied one canoe, chatting of their different adventures by sea and land, while Jasper and Mabel sat in the other, making greater progress in intimacy in a single hour than might have been effected under other circumstances in a 12-month. Notwithstanding their situation as regards the enemy, the time flew by swiftly, and the young people in particular were astonished when Cap informed them how long they had been thus occupied. "If one could smoke, Master Pathfinder," observed the old sailor, "this berth would be snug enough; for, to give the devil his due, you have got the canoes handsomely landlocked, and into moorings that would defy a monsoon. The only hardship is the denial of the pipe." "The scent of the tobacco would betray us, and where is the use of taking all these precautions against the Mingo's eyes, if we are to tell him where the cover is to be found through the nose? No, no, deny your appetites, and learn one virtue from a redskin, who will pass a week without eating even, to get a single scalp. Did you hear something, Jasper?" "The Serpent is coming." "Then let us see if Mohican eyes are better than them of a lad who follows the water." The Mohican had indeed made his appearance in the same direction as that by which Jasper had rejoined his friends. Instead of coming directly on, however, no sooner did he pass the bend, where he was concealed from any who might be higher up stream, than he moved close under the bank, and, using the utmost caution, got a position where he could look back, with his person sufficiently concealed by the bushes to prevent its being seen by any in that quarter. "The Sarpent sees the knaves," whispered Pathfinder. "As I'm a Christian white man, they have bit at the bait, and have ambushed the smoke." Here a hearty but silent laugh interrupted his words, and nudging Cap with his elbow, they all continued to watch the movements of Chingachgook in profound stillness. The Mohican remained stationary as the rock on which he stood full 10 minutes, and then it was apparent that something of interest had occurred within his view, for he drew back with a hurried manner, looked anxiously and keenly along the margin of the stream, and moved quickly down it, taking care to lose his trail in the shallow water. He was evidently in a hurry and concerned, now looking behind him, and then casting eager glances towards every spot on the shore where he thought a canoe might be concealed. "Call him in," whispered Jasper, scarcely able to restrain his impatience. "Call him in, or it will be too late. See, he's actually passing us." "No, not so, lad. Nothing presses, depend on it," returned his companion, "or the Sarpent would begin to creep. The Lord help us and teach us wisdom. I do believe even Chingachgook, whose sight is as faithful as the hound's scent, overlooks us, and will not find out the ambushment we have made." This exultation was untimely, for the words were no sooner spoken than the Indian, who had actually got several feet lower down the stream than the artificial cover, suddenly stopped, fastened a keen riveted glance among the transplanted bushes, made a few hasty steps backward, and, bending his body and carefully separating the branches, he appeared among them. "The accursed Mingos," said Pathfinder, as soon as his friend was near enough to be addressed with prudence. "Iroquois," returned the sententious Indian. No matter, Iroquois, devil, Mingo, Menguis, or Furies, all are pretty much the same. I call all rascals Mingos. Come hither, chief, and let us converse rationally." When their private communication was over, Pathfinder rejoined the rest, and made them acquainted with all that he had learned. The Mohican had followed the trail of their enemies some distance towards the fort, until the latter caught a sight of the smoke of Jasper's fire, when they instantly retraced their steps. It now became necessary for Chingachgook, who ran the greatest risk of detection, to find a cover where he could secrete himself until the party might pass. It was perhaps fortunate for him that the savages were so intent on this recent discovery that they did not bestow the ordinary attention on the signs of the forest. At all events, they passed him swiftly, 15 in number, treading lightly in each other's footsteps, and he was enabled again to get into their rear. After proceeding to the place where the footsteps of Pathfinder and the Mohican had joined the principal trail, the Iroquois had struck off to the river, which they reached just as Jasper had disappeared behind the bend below. The smoke being now in plain view, the savages plunged into the woods and endeavored to approach the fire unseen. Chingachgook profited by this occasion to descend to the water, and to gain the bend in the river also, which he thought had been effected undiscovered. Here he paused, as has been stated, until he saw his enemies at the fire, where their stay, however, was very short. Of the motives of the Iroquois, the Mohican could judge only by their acts. He thought they had detected the artifice of the fire, and were aware that it had been kindled with a view to mislead them, for, after a hasty examination of the spot, they had separated, some plunging again into the woods, while 6 or 8 had followed the footsteps of Jasper along the shore, and come down the stream towards the place where the canoes had landed. What course they might take on reaching that spot was only to be conjectured, for the Serpent had felt the emergency to be too pressing to delay looking for his friends any longer. From some indications that were to be gathered from their gestures, however, he thought it probable that their enemies might follow down in the margin of the stream, but could not be certain. As the Pathfinder related these facts to his companions, the professional feelings of the 2 other white men came uppermost, and both naturally reverted to their habits in quest of the means of escape. "Let us run out the canoes at once," said Jasper eagerly. "The current is strong, and by using the paddles vigorously we shall soon be beyond the reach of these scoundrels." "And this poor flower, that first blossomed in the clearings, shall it wither in the forest?" objected his friend, with the poetry which he unconsciously imbibed by his long association with the Delawares. "We must all die first," answered the youth, a generous color mounting to his temples. "Mabel and Arrowhead's wife may lie down in the canoes, while we do our duty like men on our feet." "Ay, you are active at the paddle and the oar, Eau douce, I will allow, but an accursed Mingo is more active at his mischief. The canoes are swift, but a rifle bullet is swifter." "It is the business of men, engaged as we have been by a confiding father, to run this risk." "But it is not their business to overlook prudence." "Prudence! A man may carry his prudence so far as to forget his courage." The group was standing on the narrow strand, the Pathfinder leaning on his rifle, the butt of which rested on the gravelly beach, while both his hands clasped the barrel at the height of his own shoulders. As Jasper threw out this severe and unmerited imputation, the deep red of his comrade's face maintained its hue unchanged, though the young man perceived that the fingers grasped the iron of the gun with the tenacity of a vice. Here all betrayal of emotion ceased. "You are young and hot-headed," returned Pathfinder, with a dignity that impressed his listeners with a keen sense of his moral superiority. "But my life has been passed among dangers of this sort, and my experience and gifts are not to be mastered by the impatience of a boy. As for courage, Jasper, I will not send back an angry and unmeaning word to meet an angry and an unmeaning word, for I know that you are true in your station and according to your knowledge. But take the advice of one who faced the Mingos when you were a child, and know that their cunning is easier circumvented by prudence than outwitted by foolishness." "I ask your pardon, Pathfinder," said the repentant Jasper, eagerly grasping the hand that the other permitted him to seize. "I ask your pardon humbly and sincerely. 'Twas a foolish as well as wicked thing to hint of a man whose heart, in a good cause, is known to be as firm as the rocks on the lake shore." For the first time the color deepened on the cheek of the Pathfinder, and the solemn dignity which he had assumed, under a purely natural impulse, disappeared in the expression of the earnest simplicity inherent in all his feelings. He met the grasp of his young friend with a squeeze as cordial as if no cord had jarred between them, and a slight sternness that had gathered about his eye disappeared in a look of natural kindness. "'Tis well, Jasper.